Before the lightning bolts, before the walls of amplifiers, before the name AC/DC thundered across stadiums, there was a quiet teenager in Sydney, walking home from school with a guitar case almost as big as his body. His name was Angus Young, and he wasn't dreaming of fame, rebellion, or glory. He just wanted to play. The air in Sydney was heavy with summer heat, the pavement shimmering as Angus weaved through narrow streets, his school uniform sticking to his skin. Inside that guitar case was more than wood and strings. It was escape. For Angus, music wasn't just a hobby. It was the only language that made sense in a noisy, uncertain world. The Young family had crossed oceans chasing a new start. They had left the cold, gray skies of Glasgow for the burning sun of Australia in the early 1960s. Money was tight, but there was always sound. Radios blaring, amplifiers humming, guitars leaned in corners like family heirlooms. The walls shook with ambition. His older brothers were already deep in music. George Young, a founding member of the Easy Beats, was proof that success could come from nothing but drive. Malcolm Young, fierce and focused, was building the foundations of what would become AC/DC. Angus watched them, silent but burning with envy and admiration. He wasn't the loudest in the room. He didn't have the swagger of a frontman or the authority of a producer. But when Angus picked up a guitar, something shifted. He didn't just play the notes, he attacked them. His fingers blistered, his strings snapped, and still he played hour after hour until his small hands could finally keep up with the chaos in his head. That was Angus's world long before the fame. A kid too small for his guitar, too stubborn to quit, and too restless to fit anywhere else. He had no idea that this simple school uniform he wore every day, the one that stuck to his back in the heat and carried the smell of pencil lead and sweat, would one day become his armor. It would follow him through every scream, every stage, every decade, and it would transform him into one of the most recognizable figures in the history of rock and roll. By 1973, the smell of beer and burnt amplifiers filled the back rooms of Sydney's rock bars. The air buzzed with competition, hundreds of bands clawing for attention, trying to be louder, faster, wilder. AC/DC was one of them. They had the sound, the hunger, and the attitude, but they didn't have a face. Every great band had a visual hook. David Bowie had his cosmic glamour. Kiss hid behind war paint. The Rolling Stones had swagger. AC/DC had sweat and distortion. But visually, they were just another group of scrappy kids with guitars. Angus tried to fix that. He wasn't afraid to experiment, even if it meant looking ridiculous. One night, he stormed onto the stage dressed as Superman. The cape tangled in his legs, nearly sending him tumbling into the drum kit. Another night, he showed up as Spider-Man, mask on, vision half gone, tripping over his own cable. He even tried Zorro once. The crowd laughed before he played a single note. Each idea fell flat. It wasn't that the costumes failed, it was that they weren't him. Angus didn't need to become something larger than life. He already was. Then one evening, at home, while the family was sitting around the kitchen table, his sister, Margaret Young, looked at him with a grin. "Why don't you wear your school uniform?" The room went quiet. Angus looked up, confused. She was half joking, half serious. But the idea stuck. The next night, he decided to try it, almost as a dare. He threw on his blazer, straightened his tie, grabbed his guitar, and stepped into the spotlight. The crowd didn't know what to make of it at first. This tiny kid in school clothes, guitar slung low, face dead serious, and then he played. From the first riff, the place erupted. The contrast was explosive. The innocent look of a schoolboy paired with the energy of a man possessed. Angus duck-walked across the floor, his cap flying, his shorts flaring, his guitar screaming. It was chaos. It was ridiculous. It was perfect. When the song ended, the audience didn't just applaud, they roared. The joke had become something bigger. That night, the schoolboy was born, and what started as a simple family prank would soon define not just Angus Young, but the visual soul of AC/DC for the next 50 years. The night Angus first wore his school uniform on stage was meant to be a throwaway experiment, something to make the crowd laugh, maybe even roll their eyes. But what happened instead was electric. The lights hit, the amps hissed, and there he was, a kid in a blazer and shorts, guitar hanging low, face twisted in concentration. For a split second, the room didn't know how to react. Then as soon as the first note ripped through the speakers, something clicked. The laughter turned into screaming. What they saw wasn't a gimmick. It was contrast. Innocence on the outside, chaos within. The crowd couldn't look away. The image of a rebellious schoolboy duck-walking across the stage, guitar shrieking like a storm, became impossible to forget. It was as if a new language of rock had been invented right there, in that tiny, sweaty club. In the following shows, Angus kept the outfit. The audience demanded it. Promoters mentioned it in ads. Journalists described the wild kid in the school uniform as the most insane different thing they'd ever seen. The visual stuck in everyone's mind long after the last note faded. But more importantly, something changed inside Angus himself. When he looked down at that uniform, he didn't see a costume. He saw permission. Permission to be loud, fearless, unstoppable. It stripped away the shy, quiet boy and unleashed something primal. That transformation became the core of every AC/DC show. The band's energy centered around Angus's manic motion, the blur of his cap, the streak of sweat, the tiny frame that somehow controlled the chaos of thunderous guitars. Within a year, the schoolboy wasn't a funny detail. It was mythology, the symbol of youth refusing to die, of rules turned upside down. And from that night forward, Angus Young would never again step on stage without that uniform. It was no longer a joke. It was his identity. At first, even Angus thought it would be temporary. Just a funny bit to help the band stand out, something to grab a few headlines. But within weeks, the schoolboy outfit wasn't just part of the act, it was the act. Fans began showing up to gigs dressed like him, shorts, ties, and all. Kids brought cardboard guitars to shows and copied his duck walk in the crowd. Promoters insisted he wear it. The image had fused with the sound, and Angus Young had become inseparable from that electric, rebellious uniform. In smoky clubs across Australia, AC/DC was transforming into a phenomenon. While other bands obsessed over style, makeup, and mystique, AC/DC delivered something raw, something you could feel. They weren't selling fashion, they were selling freedom. When Angus ran across the stage in his uniform, he wasn't just entertaining, he was breaking rules. He made rebellion look fun, he made chaos look pure, and he made simplicity look powerful. Audiences couldn't get enough. Even people who didn't love hard rock wanted to see that kid, the schoolboy who turned his guitar into lightning. Backstage, though, Angus never acted like a rock god. He was quiet, polite, still a bit awkward. He would take off his uniform, hang it neatly, and instantly become a completely different person. To the world, he was a madman. To those who knew him, he was just Angus, humble, grounded, and almost shy. But the transformation the uniform gave him was undeniable. It was more than a stage outfit. It was armor. The moment he put it on, he could forget who he was. The fear, the nerves, the doubt, all gone. He became that unstoppable force that crowds came to see, a living bolt of energy. Soon AC/DC wasn't just another bar band. They were Australia's loudest export, and Angus Young's image was their banner, wild, rebellious, unforgettable. The schoolboy uniform had done something no PR campaign ever could. It made the spirit of rock visible, and while others thought it was a gimmick, Angus knew it was something deeper. It was the truth. Every performer has a ritual, something that steadies the nerves before walking into the storm. For Angus Young, it wasn't a drink, a prayer, or a lucky charm. It was the act of putting on his uniform. He would slip his arms through the blazer, tighten his tie, adjust his cap, and with each piece, he built himself into something larger than life. By the time his Gibson SG was in his hands, he wasn't Angus anymore. He was the schoolboy. He once compared it to putting on armor before battle, and it wasn't just a metaphor. Off stage, Angus was known for being quiet, almost timid. He didn't party much, didn't like crowds, and hated interviews. But the second he stepped into that uniform, something flipped. The shy teenager vanished. In his place stood a human storm, an unstoppable blur of sweat and sound. To the audience, it looked like chaos in pure, reckless energy. To Angus, it was control. Every jump, every kick, every duck walk was perfectly in rhythm with the thunder of Malcolm's riffs and Phil Rudd's drums. He turned physical movement into sound, electricity in motion. But the uniform wasn't just a prop for power, it was a shield for vulnerability. Behind the screaming solos and manic motion, Angus was still that small kid from Sydney, still trying to prove that he belonged on stage with giants. The uniform let him hide that. It let him become the loudest version of himself, without fear. Crowds saw rebellion. Angus felt release. It was the same reason soldiers wear armor or clowns paint their faces, to survive what's coming. And when he hit the first chord of high voltage, the transformation was complete. The blazer flapped, the cap flew off, the guitar screamed, and somewhere, audiences from London to Los Angeles responded with the same wild energy. Angus would enter the stage in silence, head down, cap low. Then the first chord would drop and he'd explode. Fans didn't see a man aging year after year. They saw the same untamable kid, forever trapped in the moment before the bell rings and class begins. Then came 1980. The world went dark for AC/DC. Bon Scott, their thunder-voiced frontman, was gone. For a while, the amps were quiet. Many thought the band wouldn't recover, but Angus kept the uniform ready. When they returned to the studio, grief turned into fuel. The result was Back in Black, a monument of survival and defiance built in Bon's memory. The schoolboy stood front and center on the album's tour. Dressed the same, playing the same, unstoppable. It was the most powerful symbol imaginable. No matter who they lost, no matter what changed, the electricity would keep flowing. From that moment on, the school uniform wasn't just Angus's identity, it was AC/DC's immortality made visible. As the 1980s rolled into the 1990s, the world around Angus Young changed again and again, but he didn't. Disco had come and gone. Punk had burned bright and faded. Grunge would soon rise, tearing apart the glam metal excess that had ruled for a decade. Yet night after night, the same figure appeared on stage. Small, frantic, unstoppable, dressed like a schoolboy who'd just broken every rule in the book. There was something almost supernatural about it. While other artists reinvented themselves every few years, chasing whatever sound or look was popular, Angus stayed exactly the same. The same cap, the same tie, the same shorts, the same mad grin as he duck-walked his way across the world. And the audience never got tired of it. In fact, they needed it. The older he got, the more powerful the image became. It was a living contradiction. A man in his 40s, 50s, then 60s, still embodying the reckless teenage energy that the world had long since outgrown. It reminded fans of who they once were, and maybe who they still wanted to be. In every era, the uniform meant something different. In the 70s, it was rebellion. In the 80s, endurance. By the 90s, it had become myth. When asked why he never changed, Angus would laugh. "I can't sing," he'd say, "so I've got to do something else." But beneath the humor was truth. The uniform wasn't just tradition, it was purpose. It was his reminder that AC/DC's soul didn't live in trends or headlines. It lived in the pure, honest power of rock and roll, simple, loud, and alive. And through all those years, through fashion shifts, new generations, and the noise of the modern world, the sight of that schoolboy on stage remained the same. Because Angus Young had found the one secret that every rock star spends their life searching for. He'd figured out how to stay young forever. Today, the uniform is no longer just clothing. It's an emblem, an immortal symbol that carries the weight of everything AC/DC represents. The moment Angus Young steps on stage, dressed in that same blazer, tie, and cap, audiences don't see a costume. They see a promise, a flash of rebellion that refuses to fade. What began as a joke in the 1970s has become one of the most enduring icons in rock history. The school uniform flipped its meaning entirely. Once a symbol of rules, discipline, and obedience, it now screams defiance, youth, and freedom. It's the physical form of the phrase, "rock never grows old." But behind that thunderous image, Angus remains surprisingly humble. He's often seen off stage in simple clothes, quiet and polite, his voice soft and shy. He doesn't live like the legend people think he is. He doesn't chase headlines or surround himself with luxury. When asked what keeps him going after all these years, he usually shrugs. "I just love playing." That's the heart of it. The uniform doesn't hide a persona, it reveals one. It connects every version of Angus, the kid who practiced in a cramped Sydney bedroom, the brother who learned from George and Malcolm, the performer who carried Bon Scott's spirit forward, and the man who still plays like time never touched him. And in a strange way, the uniform is a family heirloom. It's his tribute to where he came from, to the working class roots that shaped his fire. Every thread, every crease carries the same message. You don't have to change who you are to be eternal. Fans all over the world understand that. When they see Angus in that uniform, they see themselves, the dreamer, the rebel, the kid who never fit the mold. It's not nostalgia, it's continuity. The schoolboy is no longer just a man in a suit. He's the living embodiment of what happens when you refuse to let the world tell you to calm down. The lights drop. The first chord of Thunderstruck explodes, and there he is again, the schoolboy, leaping into motion like someone plugged straight into the sky. Angus Young, now in his late 60s, still duck walks, spins, and stomps with the same manic energy that shocked audiences half a century ago. His face is older, his hair thinner, but the electricity hasn't faded a single volt. It's almost unnatural. A man his age moving with the frenzy of a teenager, night after night drenched in sweat under stadium lights. But when Angus plays, time stops. The years disappear. He becomes every version of himself at once. The shy kid from Sydney, the grieving brother, the eternal showman. The guitar becomes an extension of his heartbeat, and the uniform becomes a second skin. You can see it in the faces of the fans. Generations standing side by side. Fathers and sons, mothers and daughters, all wearing replica schoolboy caps, screaming every lyric like it's the first time they've ever heard them. For those few hours, they're all all kids again, no matter how old they are, and Angus knows it. That's why he still gives everything he has, dropping to his knees mid-solo, kicking his legs in the air, rolling across the stage until the sweat on his blazer turns it dark. Every drop of energy, every grimace, every grin is real. There's no backing track, no gimmick, no pretending. Just pure, unfiltered rock and roll. The uniform is part of that magic. It's become a ritual, the final switch that turns a quiet man into a lightning storm. No matter how many cities he visits, how many songs he plays, the result is always the same. When Angus Young puts on that cap and plugs in that Gibson, he reminds the world what rock and roll is supposed to feel like. Wild, reckless, and alive. Even after all these decades, he isn't performing. He's proving something, and that the fire doesn't go out if you keep feeding it. The arena fades to black, but the echo of that last note hangs in the air, a single vibration that seems to last forever. Angus Young stands alone under the fading glow of the lights, his schoolboy cap tilted, his blazer soaked in sweat. He doesn't bow dramatically. He doesn't make a speech. He just lets the sound die naturally, as if even the amplifiers know it's time to rest. Half a century of thunder, and he still ends every show the same way, quietly. The crowd screams, but Angus doesn't feed on it. He absorbs it, nodding slightly as if to say, "We did it again." Then he walks off stage, guitar still in hand, the strap digging into his shoulder like a familiar scar. He disappears behind the curtain, but the symbol, the uniform, the energy, the myth stays glowing in the dark like a phantom. Maybe that's why people never stop talking about the dark reason behind his outfit. They want to believe there's mystery or tragedy behind it, something dramatic hiding beneath the laughter and noise. But the truth is simpler and far more powerful. There is no dark secret. The schoolboy uniform isn't about pain or loss. It's about memory. It's the echo of who he was and the proof that he never let that version die. Every time Angus puts on that uniform, he brings that young dreamer from the streets of Sydney back to life. The boy who loved guitar more than anything. The brother who watched his family turn sound into destiny. The kid who didn't fit in anywhere until he stepped on stage and found out that misfits make the loudest music. The blazer, the cap, the tie, the shorts. They're not a costume. They're a time machine. A reminder that growing older doesn't mean growing quiet. So when the amps go silent and the crowd finally drifts away, the story doesn't end. Somewhere, another kid picks up a guitar, tries a riff, and feels that same spark ignite. Because Angus Young's schoolboy uniform isn't just his trademark. It's a challenge, a dare to anyone listening. Don't let the world make you ordinary. Don't stop running across the stage inside your own life. And above all, never stop making noise.